Everyone thinks they know how this story begins. A girl in a red cloak, a dark, winding forest, a foolish, naive mistake. But the first thing you should know, the absolute truth of it, is this: she was never lost, and she was never, ever afraid. The first time I saw her, she was walking slowly down the path, humming to herself like nothing in the woods could possibly touch her. She looked small, bright, obvious, and that, right there, was the problem. Because nothing that survives in this forest, nothing that has earned its place among the shadows and the ancient trees, ever walks like prey unless it wants to be seen. Unless it's laying a trap. Her footsteps were too even, too rhythmic. Not the hesitant, hurried steps of a child, wary of the dark. They were measured, confident. It was the walk of something that owned the ground it stood on. That was the first whisper of wrongness, the first sign that this wasn't the simple tale everyone tells their children. The air around her seemed to hold its breath. Even the birds, usually so loud in their territorial squabbles, fell silent as she passed. It was as if the forest itself was waiting for a performance to begin. People like to believe Little Red Riding Hood was innocent. A sweet, simple girl who wandered into danger without knowing any better. But I watched her closely, from the deep shadows where I live. She never strayed from the path by accident. She never hesitated at a fork in the road. She never once looked over her shoulder with that flicker of fear that all living things possess. Her red cloak was pristine, impossibly clean and bright, as if it had been chosen with meticulous care. It wasn't for warmth. It was for attention. It was a beacon. She wanted eyes on her. She wanted the forest whispering her name. And most of all, she wanted me to notice. Every detail about her was a performance. The way she'd occasionally stop to pick a flower, not with the genuine curiosity of a child, but with the deliberate grace of an actress on a stage. She'd hold it up to the light, twirl it, and then drop it, her gaze already moving forward. Her innocence was a costume, just as much as the cloak was. It was a perfectly constructed illusion, designed to lure in a very specific audience. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me deeper than any winter wind, that I was that audience. So I stepped out onto the path and let her see me. I let my shadow fall across her way, a dark interruption to her bright, calculated journey. Most children scream. They cry. They run. She smiled, a small, polite, chilling smile. "Hello," she said, her voice as clear as a bell, as if we were meeting in a bustling village square, and not in a place where people disappear, where bones settle into the damp earth, forgotten. "Where are you going?" I asked, playing my part. "To my grandmother's house," she said without a flicker of hesitation. "Deep in the woods." She even pointed the way, her small finger indicating the darker, more overgrown trail. She told me everything, far too easily, like someone reading lines they had practiced 100 times before. And while she spoke, her eyes, unnervingly steady, never left mine. She wasn't just answering a question. She was issuing an invitation. She wanted me to decide something. She wanted me to choose. That red cloak of hers? It was not just cloth. It was something more. It moved when the wind did not, rippling with a life of its own. It caught the meager light filtering through the canopy far too well, glowing with an inner luminescence. She knew what it meant. She knew red is the color of warning, the color of blood, the color of hunger. She knew I would see it and think she was careless, a splash of vibrant life easy to extinguish. She wanted me to believe she was weak, a simple meal for a clever hunter. So when she smiled that placid smile and wished me a good day, I did exactly what she expected. I took the shorter path, the one that led straight to grandmother's house. I thought I was being cunning. I thought the race had begun. People always described the grandmother as old, weak, and fragile, a bedridden woman waiting for a visit. But that is not how the forest remembers her. That is not the story the ancient trees tell. She had lived in that cottage longer than most of the oaks around her had been acorns. She knew the secret names of things you do not speak aloud after dark. She knew how to listen to the woods without being heard, how to see without being seen. She was a part of this place, woven into its fabric. By the time I reached her house, panting from my run, the door was already ajar. The fire was lit and crackling warmly. The room was tidy, ready, as if she had been waiting, because she had. The air inside was thick with anticipation and something else, something ancient and patient. The scent of dried herbs hung heavy, but beneath it was the metallic tang of old power. It was a scent that spoke of pacts and promises made long before I was born. This wasn't the home of a feeble old woman. This was a den. This was a lair. The very silence of the cottage seemed to watch me, to weigh me, to find me wanting. I thought I was early. I thought I was clever. The perfect predator executing a perfect plan. But the moment I stepped over the threshold, I felt it. The air was wrong, heavy, stagnant, quiet in a way that screamed danger. Grandmother lay in bed, her eyes sharp and glittering in the dim light. She was smiling, not with warmth, but like someone who knew exactly how the evening would end. "You are right on time," she said, her voice a dry rustle of leaves. And that's when I realized, with a dawning horror, that the house was not a shelter. It was a stage. The chairs, the bed, the fireplace, they were all props. And I was standing in the center of it, the unwitting fool in a play written just for me. The lock on the door clicked shut behind me, not with the sound of my own doing, but with a deliberate, final thud. When Red arrived, she did not panic at the sight of me. She did not gasp or scream. She closed the door behind her carefully, slid the bolt into place, and set down her basket on the table as if this was exactly where she belonged, as if this was the scene she had envisioned all along. She looked at her grandmother, who was now slowly sitting up in bed, and she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Then she turned her gaze to me. That smile again. The one that says the game is already over. The rules were never what you thought they were. "Did you really think," she asked, her voice a soft, silken whisper, "that I would walk into this alone?" That was when I understood. The journey through the woods was not the danger. I was. The red cloak, the innocent story, the feigned vulnerability, all of it was bait. Carefully chosen, perfectly presented bait. They had counted on my hunger, on my pride, on the story everyone believes about wolves being the ultimate predator. Grandmother stood, and she was not frail. She was tall, her shadow stretching and twisting on the wall like a gnarled ancient tree. Red stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with a cold, predatory light I recognized all too well, because it was the same light I saw in my own reflection. And for the first time in my long, savage life, I realized I was not the hunter. I was the harvest. I was the proof. Some stories say I did not survive that night. Others say I escaped, broken and bleeding, a shadow of my former self. The truth is less simple and far more unsettling, because as I fled back into the deep woods, the laughter of the girl and her grandmother echoing behind me, I kept wondering if the girl learned this terrible cunning from her grandmother, or if the grandmother learned it from the girl, and whether the forest is safer now that they've had their fill, or if it's just quieter, because the most dangerous traps are not teeth or claws. They are stories, stories that teach you exactly where to stand, stories that make you believe you chose it yourself. So the next time you hear about the girl in the red cloak, remember my warning. Remember that the path is never as simple as it seems, and sometimes the creature you should fear most is the one who looks the most like a victim. Thanks for listening. If you look at fairy tales differently now, follow for more.